Welcome, Julien here for 0x from beautiful Canggu, Bali. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is amazing to be back on Wefunder for our third round, and we're super thankful for the support of over 500 investors at this point. So thank you very much. Well, we are making the impact story of 0x of converting waste into clean energy around the globe a reality. So you have asked questions, and I'm here to answer those by myself, but with the help of Evelina, who's in our audience, who has been running our campaign here from Sweden. And so let's make this really quick. What do we have today in questions?
Can you give a brief on the current progress of the Paris project?
Great question. I actually came back from Paris this summer. We have built a beautiful machine that converts sewage sludge, horse manure, and municipal solid waste into clean methane. How the whole thing is done is that we have a 3-stage reactor. Actually, it's 4 in the end. It's a biodigester, which is out of our scope. And then within our scope, the fuel gets dried. We put it into our gasification system. It turns into a CO, mixed gas, and hydrogen. Then we have a secondary reactor that now converts this into more hydrogen. It's called a water shift reactor. The third reactor is what is called a methanization reactor, which is a biological reactor that then converts this gas into more methane so you can put it into a pipeline and replace imports from Russia, for example. So, quick update on our work. We have just concluded our final 2-week continuous test run. That means we have fulfilled all the obligations. We have actually gotten paid from the project as well. So for us, we have still about 10 months left of an operational contract for the city of Paris, in which we have to be on site and run this machine. But at the same time, we're getting ready for the next project going back to Germany, which is going to be happening in Dresden. But we're done. We're super excited. Not all the components before us and after us are working that well, so we don't foresee the project being in continuous operation anytime soon. We have done our job. Last one to join the project, first one done.
Can you explain more about the Vercoso project? What's the scope and what's the purpose? And what is the day-to-day work that you do for this?
Project Vercoso, I wrote about 3.5 years ago. This is sometimes how long it takes from the idea until you got the government grant and actually then the funds to execute on the project. I don't even remember what Vercoso stands for, to be quite honest, but it is a great project. So what does the project do? It is about a 1.7 million euro grant by the German Ministry of Economics, which is split between our partner company MFC, Fraunhofer Institute, which is the leading research institute in Germany, and the Technical University in Zittau. What is really cool about it is that Fraunhofer Institute has come up with a solid oxide fuel cell that can take mixed synthesis gases, including pollutants. So what does that mean? If you have never heard of a fuel cell, it is a conversion mechanism that converts in a chemical process gas into clean electricity. The only byproduct in that moment is actually water vapor, which is pretty cool. So it is not a combustion process, it is actually a chemical process. And this has been done usually in the past if you have very clean hydrogen or methane or butane, like very high quality gases. Now Fraunhofer Institute has come up with a solid oxide fuel cell that can take mixed gases, like the gas that we generate from waste. And why is that absolutely amazing? It's amazing because a fuel cell has about 2 to 3 times higher efficiency than a combustion engine. So if a small combustion engine has like 23% electric efficiency, we can push it up to 55, 56% electric efficiency. And also the whole conversion is cleaner. So we look at markets like the United States, for example, which are regulated by the EPA, where you have very strict environmental guidelines that you have to follow. This is a much cleaner process. So when this works, and we have done it under a previous government project for the previous testing phase, but only for a few hours in a very small system, this would be the most efficient system and the most environmentally system to convert waste into gas, into power anywhere in the world. And what's beautiful about it is that it can be done in a very small scale, so you can install this anywhere in the world. What has made the story even cooler for us is when we started this with a research program, we said this is going to take years. And who's going to bring down the cost of this solid oxide fuel cells? In the meantime, actually, the technology has been purchased and licensed by a company that's called ThyssenKrupp. And you might have heard that name before. It is Germany's largest engineering company that we have. They have purchased the fuel cell to use it in Saudi Arabia to actually do a reverse process. That is meaning they are not generating electricity to produce hydrogen, but to use electricity to, no, other way around. They're using it to use electricity to produce hydrogen, not like we do to use gas to produce electricity. It can be used in the same machine. So we're expecting them to bring the cost down. And if you want to have more technical details, it is super fascinating because you can even eat tars. Tars are kind of the very long carbon chains that usually cannot be converted and need to be removed from the gas. This is using it as fuel, so we don't have to purify the gas as much as we would for other processes. So, in summary, without getting too technical, what is Project Vercoso? $2 million, Fraunhofer Institute, solid oxide fuel cell. We take the waste, we convert it into gas, we run it through the fuel cell, only byproduct water vapor, and it's more efficient than anything else has been built in the world. So that's about, in a nutshell, why this is a groundbreaking project. And we have about another 2 years to go on this thing. The first X150 machine now that is going to be used in this project is being built. We are done with the entire planning process. Parts are being made as we speak, and we foresee this to be built in Q2 2025 at the university in Zittau, and will be tested from there on. So really awesome project.
How much were you able to fundraise from the latest Wefunder campaign, and what did those funds help you to achieve?
So we are back to Wefunder for one reason at this time. This is to give our existing investors one more chance to invest into the company before we're going to go for institutional capital. That means we foresee a big growth in the next coming years as our product is coming to market. So we're raising small amounts right now. We anticipate about $250,000 in this raise. We have done $500,000 before. Why does that really matter to us? It matters to us because we do get a lot of government grants, especially in Europe, especially in Germany on the state and federal level. So that means if we raise $1, we usually get $4 from the government. There you see if we can raise $1 million, it makes $5 million in investment capital in our projects. So it does make a huge difference. So please reach out to us, hear about the story, and we also couldn't do it without you. So please share the story on Wefunder with your friends, with your partners, and be part of this incredible impact story.
What key milestones should investors expect in the next 12 months? How will this impact valuation and market expansion?
That is a great question. What do we expect for the next 12 months from the development at 0x? First thing is, as I said, we finished up Paris, but we still have a clause in our contract that could trigger another 200 machines being built in Paris over the coming years. So we want to see really where this goes. Second of all, we're dealing with the first big projects that we're now developing, like we've got an LOI out of Ghana, for example, for 5 to 100 megawatts. So that would be 10 to 100 machines in Africa right now within one project. The third thing we're obviously expecting is the finalization of the X150 machine, which is the final industrial scale up from the Paris machine. And it's kind of the largest machine we can fit inside a container, which is part of our model of being able to transport those things anywhere in the world. So we see a massive new pipeline. We see quite big growth already in our staff. We see new research programs at the university in Malaysia, which is called Petronas University. And we still have a few things to sort out along the way. One is the gas to hydrogen extraction, which we're working on with a company out of Canada. The second thing is rural electrification. We're still learning about things about how to integrate the engines. And then the waste to fuel cell, which is called Vercoso. So we still have a few development goals. But the next machine now is the one that we actually going to be selling to global markets, and building that pipeline and hiring new people to do that and execute on that pipeline. New engineers, new training, new remote service centers are coming in the coming months. And then our first institutional raise, which is going to give us more capital to grow faster. So I think we're looking at quite interesting next 12 to 24 months. For us, Paris really was the starting point where we can say out of the laboratory into the market. So I think valuation is going to do quite well in the coming months. And I would love to find a big institutional partner or commercial partner to support us in this global growth in the next 24 to 36 months, because it's very hard to really build a global company at this point. It's very, very expensive. So we invite partners to work with us in all these different markets to create maximum growth, maximum impact at the same time over a rather short period of time.
Hi, Julien. In Dubai, there's no proper sewage system, and every day hundreds of trucks have to collect the human waste from the buildings to a treatment plant. My question is, would it be possible to install your system in, let's say, the Burj Khalifa and treat directly on the waste on the site?
Great question. I was actually in Dubai just last year discussing these opportunities. We're also talking to Masdar City, for example, talking to partners in Oman. Always the same problem. We have this massive buildings, they produce a lot of human waste, a lot of sewage to a certain extent. They often have a water filtration system, but they're still trucking around large amounts of sewage sludge, which is pretty much liquid poop and everything that comes with it. And yes, actually our technology could be installed right on site. And the huge benefit would be that we would reduce the volume of it by like 95, 96%. And we would turn it into an output product. In that case, there would be no energy left to power the building, for example, because it's going to need some energy to condense the water, because we don't like to convert water. So the byproduct, they will produce something called biochar, which is a great fertilizer or building material, and it's chemically stable. So it doesn't smell anymore. And again, it's a small percentage of the input volume. So we could just on site, this is a great use case. We could reduce the amount of human waste by 96, 97%. We could stop the trucks, they need to come and pick it up. We could produce a product that can be used in agriculture, for example, like biochar, and we produce a carbon capturing product because there's actually still carbon left in there. So you can probably even get CO2 certificates for this as well. So yes, this would be a great solution. Do this on site and stop trucking around poop.
Can Zero X address the problem of excess pig manure in Iowa and other states where animal feces has caused an environmental disaster?
That is a great question. We have asked about this quite a lot. Yes, the answer is, let's say you have big cattle farms, for example. You produce massive amounts of manure. You don't really know where to bring it. There's really massive environmental impact from this, polluting groundwater, everything else. There's high concentration of antibiotics, obviously, in feedstock, which ends up in the groundwater as well. And it smells really bad. There are even studies that cancer rates around those cattle farms are much higher than on average in the rest of the country. So short answer to that, yes, pretty much all the byproducts from the food industry could be at least converted into biochar. And what does that mean is that we use the excess heat to dry down the water. We can condense it so it's going to be clean. And then in the end of it, we have a process that the solid particles, which is not much from that process, now automatically run back through the reactor and is converted into a chemically stable form of fertilizer, which is called biochar. And the amazing thing is this still has a lot of the minerals inside, which you want to bring back. It still has the carbon, the CO2 stored, and it's chemically stable, so it doesn't smell, you can store it, and it's only going to be a very small percentage of the ingoing waste. So we could solve this problem tomorrow. If you got any leads there, any connection, would love to do a pilot. To a certain extent, that's what we're doing in Paris. We're taking the sewage sludge and horse manure, which kind of would be a very similar feedstock. And believe me, you can't smell it, you can't hear it. It's clean, and the byproduct you can actually touch in the end.
Who are your competitors, and how do you ensure that your waste to energy solutions remain competitive?
Excellent question. I have to answer this in every slide deck. What are our main competitors? So I would say the biggest competitor that we have right now, especially when we go into developing countries, is dumping your waste into the mangroves or the ocean. Because that is a process that is very cost effective, doesn't cost you anything. And so no matter what we build, we will never be as cheap as dumping it into the river. I mean, that's a big part where waste goes. The second biggest competitor is landfills, because it's also still very cheap to just dump it somewhere and leave it, right? This is how waste is used in most places globally that are not big cities. Then we have in large cities, metropolitan areas, we have big waste treatment centers where the waste often is burned. Then you have steam generators, steam turbines to convert that into power. This is off-the-shelf technology, but it usually starts at a few €100 million. It's done if you really have a lot of waste and takes a lot of time to build. And this is really something you would do like in a major city like Addis Ababa or something like this when you talk about millions of people. When we now look at smaller solutions, and you look at mixed waste streams, there are not that many competitors out there that really have an off-the-shelf solution. You can have biodigesters. which work on some agricultural waste, but you still have a waste product coming out. So that's only about 50% of the equation. And you have small-scale incinerators that are also out there. Many of them will need excess energy actually brought in the form of gas or oil in order to make the waste burn at temperatures which are not pollutant anymore. So not a lot of competition coming from this thing. Then there are obviously some companies that are in similar industries like Sierra Energy, for example, which is funded by Bill Gates and Breakthrough Ventures, which is kind of similar from the approach. Many of these machines, though, are much, much bigger. So if we look at the small scale gasification technologies, we look at other companies like Spanner in Germany, for example, like Wegscheid, for example, that are using mainly high quality wood waste. If you really look at decentralized waste treatment of the last waste stream that is available, that means after all the recyclables have been removed, there's not that much competition out there, and for that, a rather sizable market. So a lot of niche producers, a lot of small producers. What I'm sometimes lacking is any technical evidence, like externally validated studies, for example, how good they are. There are a lot of people out there that claim that they can do great things, but I think there's still a big market out there. So some good competitors, a lot of people obviously working on this thing. Nothing so far that really has scared me. And when Paris was looking for a solution provider, they went to all the big companies, and nobody really could prove in the laboratory that they had a stable process that produced a gas of the quality that they were looking for. So that was a good validation for us that we at least in the top category of providers at this point. So long story short, we don't really know. A lot of attempts there, obviously big global market. If you have another lead for us to follow up and find out if they do more, please let us know.
Have you considered a start engine crowdfunding after this Wefunder to cross-pollinate liquidity providers?
Very good question. We have looked at other crowdfunding platforms. Start Engine obviously is one of them. So far, we have not moved forward on that because the crowdfunding for us financially is a small incentive compared to the government grants where we put most of our focus. So right now, most of our investors are on Wefunder, so we just back here to give them a chance to reinvest with us and maybe pick up some family and friends around that. So we'll consider it, but I think our main focus is to really work with institutional investors and strategic partners in the future to enter markets. And this is probably going to be our last crowdfunding campaign out there.
Are you thinking of setting up in Oceania?
Good question. So I'm personally based with part of our team in Bali, Indonesia already. So we are pretty much at your doorstep. We have been talking to investors in Australia quite extensively. There is obviously a lot of things, a lot of opportunities for us when it comes to remote mining, when it comes to farming. It's a huge continent, so a lot of things that can be done. We haven't made a final decision on this because once we enter a market like this, it tends to get really expensive, but it's definitely possible. It's on our top list right now. I would say Australia, Japan, South Korea, United States are our top markets we look at right now, so it's up there on the list.
You seem to have many projects and collaborations like Paris, Vercoso, Petronas, but what project or partnership is currently the priority and most important in terms of growth?
As I said, we are in a position where we are working on multiple fronts simultaneously. So we are very confident about our core reactor system that converts waste into gas. I think this is working very, very well. We have demonstrated that in Paris. But we're still at that point where like every project we do is of absolutely vital importance. We also say no to a lot of projects. We say no to a lot of inquiries. So the ones that you hear about, like Vercoso, for example, is a groundbreaking project. Petronas is a strategic partner for us, not just in the development of the waste-to-engine system that we're working on, but also in training new staff, in building a technical infrastructure of commissioning engineers, for example, in remote monitoring. So every story you hear about for us has to make sense right now because we're too small to just run after every project. So you can see we have a lot on my desk. I think my total right now in government-funded projects is about 52. This is how many projects we run simultaneously. And this is why we need a lot of interns. A lot of people want to make a difference just to keep this whole thing under control and manage the progress of all of these projects at the same time in different continents, in different countries, with different funding partners. It's an exciting time to be at 0x right now.
Have you considered licensing your technology to other countries or companies to scale faster?
Yes, we're always looking at strategic partners. We're also talking to strategic partners. So in our history, we were primarily a lab company, an R&D company. So we are no stranger to the idea of licensing our technology. What we do is we plan the whole thing. We could literally send the computer files somewhere else and just do the commissioning ourselves, the remote management. If we find the right partners, especially the waste industry is often very localized or on a national level. So partners are welcome. We are talking to some partners already. And we're also talking to some partners that are very focused on certain use cases. Let's say they just do rural electrification, or they're just doing farm waste, or they're just doing sewage sludge, or they're just doing hydrogen, or just doing methane. The technology has so many use cases that for us internally, it's very hard to be focused and exceptionally good at all of them at the same time. So partners always welcome. We'd love to do some license agreements.
Okay, is the goal ultimately to make an exit, and how could that look like?
Yes, my favorite question. I've been with this technology for a long time, and I can tell all of our investors that are in the same boat as I am. I will only make money if we do an exit, is to find a strategic partner in the next 24 to 36 months that is going to take over this company, that's going to take it to the next level. I said we have a background as an engineering development company, not as a global service company. So I really want to, make this as quick and painless as possible. I did have an experience this year, though. We're working with a Cox Business School at SMU, Southern Methodist University out of Houston. And I told them that I would rather, find a strategic partner sooner than later. And they said, listen, the big valuation growth now is coming, that you're coming out of the lab, now that you're starting to do revenue, now that you're doing the first big pilots out there. So stick with it another 2 or 3 years. I think that's a realistic time frame for all of us. Get this product to market, get it out there, make it perfect, make people talk about it, and then work with one partner or multiple partners, take this to global markets. And at the same time, I do believe that we have a lot of value coming out of our project development pipeline. This is why we're going a lot deeper on the project development with international partners, because if we can sign 20-year contracts to offtake waste, for example, there's a very, very different margin to that. There's a very different cash flow to that than simply selling one machine at a time. So we are looking into building a great portfolio of projects and then potentially sell it to a private equity partner, which could be option number 2. Or option number 3 could be a classic IPO. If there's a window somewhere in the world, let's say we're looking at South Korea, we're looking at Japan, we're looking at Australia right now, and see if there's a market out there that fosters our company. Because we're on Wefunder and because we're registered with the SEC and because we have been doing this for a few years now and we have good numbers and we have very, very high compliance standards, it actually would be pretty easy for us to list on a global stock exchange, for example, in comparison. It's never easy, but easier for a well-organized, well-structured company. So these are the exit options that we're looking for, but SMU was very, very clear. Don't say that in public. Stick with it another 2 or 3 years, bring the product to market, and then do a big exit with all of your investors. So that's what we're working on. And this is it from our first Q&A. Thank you all for your questions on the platform. Again, we're super excited to be here. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly at j.uhlig@exventure.co. You can also, of course, post more comments on the Wefunder campaign. More importantly, please share our story with other potential investors, with your friends, with your family. If you have any leads for us, now you know more about our exit strategy, about our partner strategy, about where we can offer solutions. So we kind of depend on you to share our story. We don't have a big marketing office here, so most referrals that we get are coming from research partners and partners out there. So please take this opportunity. Let's grow this thing together and build an incredible impact company that is truly finally solving the global waste pollution. This is it from me, Julien, here from beautiful Canggu, Bali. I hope you enjoyed this little presentation. We see you for the next round. More questions below.